Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire.
This just in, Rudy Giuliani just talked to the New Yorker, and the president's personal attorney could not have been more frank about why he worked to push out Marie Yovanovitch from her position as U.S. ambassador to Ukraine. Yovanovitch is a respected career diplomat who served ambassadorships under 3 presidents. Remember, she testified in the impeachment inquiry that she was forced out in May. So let's go straight to CNN Crime and Justice reporter Shimon Prokopez. Shimon, so what exactly did Giuliani say?
Yeah, forced out, Brooke. Just to remind folks, she was forced out based on what she believed was a lot of false narratives, false information that was put out there by people in the Ukraine, by Rudy Giuliani, made its way to the president, and then ultimately she was recalled and removed. And this is really a stunning admission, I think, in reading this from Rudy Giuliani when he was interviewed by the New Yorker. And what he basically says, he admits to the entire thing, saying that I believe that I needed Yovanovitch, this is the Ukrainian ambassador, out of the way, he said. She was going to make the investigation difficult for everybody. And of course, he's referring here to the investigation into the Bidens. This is exactly what the Southern District of New York, the U.S. attorney here, is investigating. Why did they remove her? The removal of her and the facts surrounding that are mentioned in the indictment of the associates, of Rudy Giuliani's associates that were just indicted in the last few months. That investigation very much ongoing. And I think anyone you ask, lawyers that I've read this quote to, they're just floored by it. It is an admission in some ways. And it's also, he is saying this in the middle of this investigation,
Stunning.
Something that the Southern District of New York and the FBI is looking into.
Yeah.
It really is shocking, but not probably surprising because it's Rudy Giuliani. But for his lawyer, and certainly it's going to make his job a lot much harder.
Added to the bucket of current investigations.
Yes.
President Trump is strongly defending Rudy Giuliani tonight as his personal lawyer stirs up yet more controversy in connection with the Ukraine scandal. Let's bring in our analyst to discuss. And Susan Hennessy, you've got a new book coming out next month entitled Unmaking the Presidency, Donald Trump's War on the World's Most Powerful Office. Just got it. Looking forward to reading it. I'm sure there's a lot of useful information in there. But let's talk about Giuliani right now. His effort to oust the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch. He says in the New Yorker, I believe that I needed Yovanovitch out of the way. She was going to make the investigations difficult for everybody. What does that tell you?
I think it's a really significant admission, even though it's something that I think a lot of people already suspected was the reality. This is Giuliani acknowledging that the smear campaign against Marie Yovanovitch was indeed tied to this essentially corrupt pursuit of wanting political investigations. It's also really significant that he said they needed to get her out of the way in order to get these investigations. If this administration actually cared about corruption, about rooting out corruption in Ukraine, Marie Yovanovitch is someone they would want on their team. This is a person who has a very strong reputation among both Democrats and Republicans for being a crusader against corruption. So the fact that Giuliani identified that he needed to get her out of the way is a pretty strong indication that what he was looking to do was not root out corruption, but actually engage in corrupt acts himself. It's also an indication of how valuable Rudy Giuliani's testimony might be to our full understanding of what exactly happened here.
Wolf, it's of course worth it to read the entire story by Adam Entos, my colleague in the New Yorker, which is just unbelievable in its detail. But you just have to ask yourself, who is Rudy Giuliani? Why is he there? What is he doing? And the idea that he is working it as a criminal defense attorney is just absurd. He is running American foreign policy. He is trying to get the American ambassador out of the way. Think about that as a concept for a private citizen. And he succeeded. I mean, it is just an extraordinary thing. This is what Democrats mean when they say the facts of the case are undisputed. Even the president's lawyer is admitting the facts of the case.
President Michael Garhay strongly defending Giuliani. He's retweeting his tweets. How do you think this will all play out, this admission about getting rid of the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine? How will it play out in the Senate trial?
I think we'll have to find out when the trial happens, but I do think this kind of exposure, this kind of admission, really cuts against the defense you're likely to see in the Senate. The defense is likely to be he did nothing wrong, or this is all a witch hunt. But when you hear something like that, as Jeffrey just said, it's hard to deny it and ignore it. So what we may be doing is hearing stuff in public that cuts against the defense, and then the president will have to deny the validity of it.
Michael is so adorable. He thinks the facts are actually going to matter at the trial. I want to give him a hug. It's really great that you believe that.
I didn't say that, but I appreciate that, Jeff.
It is Tuesday, the 17th of December of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. A mere dash, a small scant pinch of hot Hungarian smoked paprika will make all the difference in the world. It always does. Well, it looks like, as you heard at the top there, Giuliani making a stunning admission of guilt, pushing out Yovanovitch, well, because she was in the way. And we'll see. I actually think that leadership in the Senate will find a bit of a mutiny on their hands. I don't think it's going to be enough to actually vote for removal, but at least setting the rules. We may have a better chance there, since there's only 51 votes needed, as the format of the impeachment is voted upon, agreed upon by both sides. Mitch McConnell may not have as much power in that process as he expects. I don't think he's as good of a vote counter as Nancy, but that's because he has a lot less to count. And he usually doesn't have to count because everybody's been counting their Russian rubles laundered into dollars. On the Republican side. As an aside, just remember, the Russians hacked into the RNC also. So I'm just waiting to find out what they're going to drop. You know, when they did drop the stolen records from the DNC, what was the great revelation outside of a really nice risotto recipe? What was the great revelation that came out of that? Well, it looks like a lot of them were pretty much didn't like Bernie. And the reason they didn't like Bernie is because he wasn't a Democrat. That's the big revelation. And so now we get to hear all the time is that we kept Bernie from running as a Democrat. No, we didn't. He ran as a Democrat and he lost in the primaries. Oh, he didn't get all of the help that you were expecting him to get just because, well, you know. One way to get that nod from the Democratic Party is to really work with the party for a long time. Also, did Bernie kick any money down to down ticket candidates? No. Come on. That's how you play the game. And he didn't want to play. All right. He thought he could come out as, like, I don't know, a free agent. Step into the batter box and hit a grand slam, but there was nobody else on base. You got to get those down ticket candidates in office, all right? So that was an aside now, wasn't it? So much news in the world. Oh, I will be attending an impeachment rally tonight. Well, 5 p.m. Had a bit of a time change. The closest one for me is in Grants Pass, so I'll be going to the courthouse in Grants Pass to attend that one. Looks like there's a couple of hundred who have already RSVP'd, which means there could be more because, some people don't do that. They'll just show up. Regardless, I'm expecting a crowd. There's been quite a few marches in opposition to this administration here in Southern Oregon. And that is heartwarming because the most loudest voices, I guess that's redundant, the loudest voices are really these right-wing Trump bros. They just will not shut up. And also anti-vaxxers, which are not necessarily right-wing, though a lot of them are. But there's some on our side, too, that are just a little over the top with their anti-vax ideas. And got into it a little bit, not just on anti-vax, but any number of issues are really embraced by the right. The Lyndon LaRouches, the InfoWars crowd. And it was put to me that actually, families from California are moving here to Oregon, Southern Oregon specifically, to escape the mandatory vaccinations that are in California right now. And I was thinking, there's a lot of Oregonians that don't like Californians of any stripe coming into this state. In fact, even before my son was born, there were bumper stickers that were prominently displayed here in Oregon that read, "Do not Californicate Oregon." And this is way back in the mid to early 70s. Come on. So now the logic is that if you're too batshit crazy for California, move to Oregon? I think there's some Oregonians that are maybe not really embracing that logic, because that isn't logic. But regardless, we do have a very virulent anti-vax movement. And you know what? They like to threaten you with guns because they allow you to do that here. Right? No mandatory vaccinations, though I hope to get that passed soon. But you can open carry your gun so you can tell everybody else what polite conversation will be like and who will be deciding what polite conversation is. As they finger their guns, worried that they're going to be killed in their sleep by the liberals, because that's what they've been told on Fox News for decades and decades and decades. That's why they're able to do the work of Vlad, because we Democrats are the real enemy, right? And as I was told explicitly, I am so old I can't take in new information. I have had a mental decline that incapacitates my ability to be able to take in new concepts about how the world should be run. I need to get out of the way. And what are these new concepts that I'm incapable of embracing? Oh, the old ones like racism, misogyny, xenophobia. Yeah, I just cannot, for some reason, wrap my brains in advocacy around xenophobia, racism, misogyny. I cannot do it. Well, I'm just old and set in my ways, aren't I? Well, what's on the rest of the menu here? In the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, a new Trump proposal will let banks count giving money to the NFL as helping the poor. Wow. You mean if a team wants to build a stadium, they can tap municipal bonds and also the banks, and that will count as giving to the poor? How does that work? Because apparently they're saying a sports stadium, just by virtue of its existence, raises the wealth of everybody there. Everybody, even the poor people. They'll feel richer. They won't be, though. GOP lawmakers reject sanctuary cities for humans, but they sure like them for guns. Well, guns don't kill people. People kill people. And the Sackler Family drug cartel withdrew over $10 billion in a decade from their Purdue Pharma and then hid the proceeds in obscure trusts, holding companies, and LLCs. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Estonia apologized after its interior minister mocked the new Finnish Prime Minister as a salesgirl. Of course, we reported when she attained the seat of Prime Minister, the youngest Prime Minister, not only in the history of Finland, but right now in the whole world. Oh, just a mere salesgirl. And the EU told Malta to hasten its push for independent judges and prosecutors amid an uproar over the investigation into the 2017 murder of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. At the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page, is our chat room link, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. And to the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then find the button or link to our Patreon page. Do please become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio. We have been resisting for over 8 years now, and we've been able to do it because of your generosity. Though, as Tom has reminded us, the bulk of what we do here comes out of our own wallets. We would still be unable to do it without you. And your generosity has sustained us in being able to pay off some of our bills because they keep increasing. And of course, we need to purchase newish machinery, which I have been identifying probably after the first of the year. We'll get those phased in. We'll first purchase software loaded and then phase those machines in. And if you could afford a espresso type coffee drink, buy us one once a month. It would be great. Send that money to us, and we can stretch those dollars beyond compare. I should also mention, if you could maybe forego just for a little bit, even though Netroots Radio, I have to say, is in dire need of funds, Kelly Lincoln is in even more dire need right now. So if you could maybe push some funds her way, it would help her a lot. You know, we don't get paid at Netroots Radio. In fact, we need your help, actually, to pay the bills, even though we pay most of them ourselves. But Kelly is in quite dire need. The city's made an ultimatum to a lot of people in her position, and I guess they can. It's like a merry, savage Christmas now, isn't it? Wow. So help her out if you could, because then it helps us out, too. Thank you. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Just go to @NetrootsRadio. Tom takes care of that, and we are forever in Tom's debt for that and all the other tasks that he does, as well as Kelly. She does so many other tasks as well, so thank you both. Follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam, and that's a good place to follow me. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos about 10 minutes before showtime. And then, if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West. Pick up podcasts, most importantly, pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Well, it's been pretty rough. I had a rough day yesterday. This part of the year is now coming to the point where my son left this plane of existence. And in these last weeks, it's hard not to remember what we were doing then and not thinking so much about the finite aspect of life. Because you always think you got more time, don't you? But, yeah, particularly hard. I'm even finding a bit of trouble just getting through this because my voice quavers a little bit, and the reason for it is that I keep having waves of memory wash over me, and the sound of his voice and the conversations we had and remembering text. Oh, yeah, Facebook still has not released one of his accounts, a music account, by the way, that he and I would DM on. So I have a lot of DMs from the last days of his life right there that I don't have access to. Now, some folks have suggested that there's a way to do that. But it would be nice if Zuckerberg would just, open up the account. I mean, my son's dead. He's not going to say anything bad about Trump anymore. Okay? My son would routinely get his account suspended because he was rather vociferous in, making sure that people knew what a dick Trump is. So it would be nice, Zuck, if you would free that up. Yeah, maybe one day when it happens to you. I doubt it. He's in a different stratosphere than the rest of us. So, particularly hard day, and I just keep remembering what we were doing at this point. And I try not to, but I do. Oh, well, c'est la vie, as they say. Let's dive into this first offering here on the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And it is out of The American Independent by the great Oliver Willis. Now, we know that NFL owners have donated millions to Trump and the Republican Party over the years. Not so much the players, but there's a lot of players in a particular economic bracket that they feel compelled to vote for the Republicans, too. So some of them like Trump. I have it on pretty much on the low that a lot don't. But the owners love him. Banks may soon be... Oh, let me back up. I don't know why the owners love him. He bankrupted the U.S. NFL and then tried to... Or the USFL and then tried to buy into the NFL, but he was too corrupt. He had too many mob ties, not just Italian, not just New York Italian mob, but the Russian mob, too. And there's no way they were going to let him have the Buffalo Bills. I think it was the team up for sale. He said, no way. We're already having our problems with the mobs already. Do we want one actually in the employ? And so they wouldn't let him in. But now apparently they love him. At least the Patriots do. Belichick and his people got caught again spying, videotaping practices and playbooks of another team. I believe it was the Bengals. Like they really needed to do that. But, when you're used to cheating, I'm sorry, I'm going to offend a bunch of Patriot fans. Don't say anything about the Patriots or the Grateful Dead. Either one of those groups, if you insult them, they get rather violent. At least verbally. At least. Banks may soon be allowed to finance NFL stadiums and count such actions as working on behalf of the poor, possibly even getting a tax break for doing so under a new proposal from the Trump administration. Bloomberg reported yesterday, Monday, that the proposed rule change put forward by regulators appointed by Trump was part of an effort to rewrite the Community Reinvestment Act, which requires banks to steer a portion of their money to people in poor neighborhoods. Now, of course, Trump and his Nazi KKK dad were both fined for the largest fine for a civil rights violation in housing. Oh, did I fail to mention not once, but twice? So, do you think that the Community Reinvestment Act has been on Trump's radar for a while? Yes, it has. Under the proposal, banks can meet their obligations to act through investment in a qualified opportunity fund established to finance improvements to an athletic stadium in an opportunity zone that is also a low or moderate income census tract. Well, it was noted that more than a dozen current NFL venues are located in opportunity zones and would be able to take advantage of the proposed rule changes. Among them are M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore, Maryland, where the Baltimore Ravens recently completed a $120 million in upgrades, as well as the Denver Broncos Empower Field. Those are also facilities for, there are also facilities for pro baseball, basketball, soccer, and soccer teams in the zones. If the regulatory changes go through, a number of its beneficiaries would be multimillionaire and billionaire NFL owners, many of whom have donated to Trump and the Repug Party over the years. I shorten Republican to Repug. Why? Because I can. It would also represent a redirection of funds that currently benefit low-income areas and residents. And Trump doesn't like poor people. Just, God. He's not a president of the people. He's a president of the rich. NFL owners gave $7.7 million to Trump's scandal-plagued inauguration committee, along with another $1.1 million for Trump's election. And Trump's has often touted his personal relationship with Patriots owner Bob Kraft, who is worth a reported $6.9 billion. And Kraft was recently at the White House for the administration's Hanukkah celebration. You know, the one where after the meeting with the conservative Jewish group, where he said, I know you Jews don't like me, but I like you counting my money. And other really anti-Semitic tropes right to their faces. Why? Because he can. This next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays, is brought to us by Josh Israel, also from the American Independent. A trio of congressmen from Virginia have backed a push by gun rights activists for local governments to simply ignore any new gun safety laws under the guise of so-called Second Amendment sanctuary. But the same three have previously backed legislation to punish localities that declare themselves sanctuary cities for immigrants. Apparently, guns have more rights than immigrants. Even after a horrific mass shooting in Virginia Beach in May, the GOP majorities blocked any gun action. Last month, Virginians elected new Democratic majorities in both chambers of its legislature. 75% of the state voters said gun control was a very important issue going into the election. And Democrats ran a common-sense gun safety law campaign. Now, with the support from Democratic Governor Ralph Northam, legislation to do things like require universal background checks and establish red flag protections are likely to become law once the legislatures convene next month, or the legislature convenes next month. But before November's results were even certified, leading gun activists announced a scheme to get conservative-leaning localities to simply ignore any new gun laws. You know, if they can't nullify an election, if they can't remove somebody from office, and if they can't secede into another country run by Vlad, they'll just ignore the law. You know, this is the party of law and order. They'll make up what the law is, then order you to believe their asses or else. Virginia Attorney General Mark Herring, a Democrat, said last week that these declarations have no legal weight in a state with a strong Dillon rule precedent that made the legislature rather than the local government superior. But in recent days, 3 Republican members of Congress from Virginia, Ben Cline, Denver Riggleman, and Rob Whitman, all backed the gun rights protesters and their efforts. Cline sent a representative to the Stanton City Council last week to endorse the gun sanctuary movement. You want to have a sanctuary for these illegal pests infesting our great country? We'll show you, you stupid liberal. We'll show you. Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy is brought to us by anonymous worker bees at Reuters. Now, these anonymous worker bees refer to the Sackler family as merely the Sackler family, but the Netroots Radio Style Manual specifies that the Sackler family is referred to as the Sackler Family Drug Cartel. Owners of Purdue Pharma, well, they transferred more than $10 billion in a decade from the OxyContin maker to its trusts and holding companies, as well as some LLCs. And that was cited in a new audit commissioned by the drug maker. Well. The audit, which was prepared by consulting firm Alex Partners, is likely to add further scrutiny on how much the Sackler drug cartel family should pay to resolve lawsuits that Purdue Pharma faced regarding the U.S. opioid epidemic. Lawsuits filed by state and local governments allege Purdue and the Sackler family drug cartel contributed to a public health crisis that has claimed the lives of nearly 400,000 people since 1999. That's the only ones we've been able to count. By aggressively marketing opioids while downplaying their addiction and overdose risks. Or you have a hangnail? Have some Oxy. The audit showed that from 2008 through 2017, Purdue's payouts to the Sackler family totaled $10.7 billion. The auditors reported that they did not know how much cash distributed to the Sacklers was actually used to pay taxes. We need full transparency into the total assets and must know whether they sheltered them in an effort to protect against creditors and victims because they are declaring bankruptcy. But, 10 bill, when you're down to your last 10 bill, life can be so very, very difficult. Well, Purdue reaped up to $13 billion in profits for the Sackler family drug cartel, the U.S. state said in October, opposing efforts to halt lawsuits alleging the company and its owners helped fuel the epidemic. We are committing to holding the Sacklers responsible for the role they played in fueling the opioid crisis and will not stop fighting until we have achieved justice for victims, Attorney General Letitia James of New York said. The drug maker had filed for bankruptcy protection in September to pause thousands of lawsuits when it tried to build support for a proposed settlement it estimates is worth $10 billion. Well, I guess they just put $10 billion aside to pay it off? No. They kept $10 billion aside to offset what they're going to be paying out. All right, so they won't feel the sting of being the Sackler family drug cartel. I would expect possibly jail time as well as the fine. But then, I'm a romantic. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, you know we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American's 60-Second Science. I'm Jason Goldman. In 2018, biologist Jan Vendetti published a paper that described the discovery of 5 species of non-native snails and slugs in Southern California. The research would not have been possible without some 1,200 volunteers who uploaded nearly 10,000 photos of gastropods to the Slime Project. That's snails and slugs living in metropolitan environments, on an app called iNaturalist.
So the entire existence of that paper is dependent upon these citizen scientists. How do you credit those people?
Greg Pauly, herpetology curator at the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles.
There's some very specific requirements that a lot of journals and a lot of academic societies use, and those requirements largely would exclude non-professional scientists. And to me, that's absurd.
That's why Pauly, together with Vendetti and several Australian biologists, are arguing that criteria must change to recognize citizen scientists as authors on scientific journal articles. They propose what they're calling group co-authorship. They make the case in the journal Trends in Ecology and Evolution. The author list on Vendetti's snail and slug paper includes the phrase citizen science participants in slime. But that phrase is absent when you look up the paper on Google Scholar. The publication software simply isn't equipped to handle that kind of authorship, and so it erases the group's vital contribution. In another case, several years ago in Australia, a team of researchers tried to condition native monitor lizards to avoid chowing down on the invasive and poisonous cane toads. And for the most part, it worked.
But the only reason it was successful was because they partnered with the traditional landowners in northwestern Australia, this group called the Balangara Rangers.
Several journals flat out refused to allow for the inclusion of the Rangers as group co-authors. Eventually, the researchers did convince the editors of some journals to allow it, but the group's title was abbreviated as if it was a first and last name in online indexing software. B Rangers. The researchers argue that these errors and omissions don't only render the critical contributions of an indigenous community as invisible, they could also be perceived as discriminatory.
If the person who had made that contribution was an undergraduate or a graduate student who was trying to pursue a career in the sciences, we would all say, oh no, of course that person should be a co-author, or that group of people should be a co-author. But we don't necessarily extend that same line of reasoning to citizen scientists.
Allowing for group co-authorship is not a new idea. In 2004, the journal Nature published a paper titled Initial Sequencing and Analysis of the Human Genome. It listed as the sole author the International Human Genome Sequencing Consortium.
So let's just co-opt this group authorship model and turn it into group co-authorships. And this really shouldn't be that hard.
Thanks for listening. For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Jason Goldman.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. It doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution, and you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage, because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1760. That was the day that Deborah Sampson was born in Plimpton, Massachusetts. She was the first known woman to impersonate a man in order to fight in the Revolutionary War. Her family was poor. As a girl, young Deborah became an indentured servant. The hard farm work she performed built her physical strength. During the winter, when farm work was slow, Deborah worked as a school teacher. When she was 21, she dressed as a man and walked 30 miles to enlist in the 4th Massachusetts Regiment of the Continental Army at Bellingham. She called herself Robert Shirtliff. During battle, Deborah was shot in the leg. Fearing her secret would get out, she extracted the bullet herself, covering and hiding the wound. She served for 2 years without anyone discovering her true identity. Then she became ill with a fever. This time, she could not avoid a doctor's care, and her secret was exposed. She received an honorable discharge. Later, Paul Revere wrote a letter on her behalf to Congress, helping her to receive a soldier's pension. Deborah went on a speaking tour, sharing the story of her experiences. She wore her uniforms during her talks. Since the Revolutionary War, the ability of women to have a career in the military and serve in combat has been an issue for debate. In 2013, Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta lifted the ban on women in combat. The change opened more than 200,000 military positions to women for the first time. President Obama declared, "Valor knows no gender." Deborah Sampson surely would agree with that. Today's Labor History in 2 brought to you in memory of Carol Hillman, a passionate friend of workers and volunteer of the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Wednesday is the big day this week. That's when, for only the third time in history, the House of Representatives will vote to impeach the president. The action then moves to the Senate, where they'll hold a trial next year to consider whether to remove him from office. Chuck Schumer, the Senate's minority leader, is pushing for a trial to include new testimony from White House officials and new documents.
To engage a trial without the facts coming out is to engage in a cover-up. To conduct a trial without the facts is saying we're afraid, we have something to hide. To conduct a trial without relevant witnesses who haven't been heard from, to just rehash the evidence presented in the House, just doesn't make any sense. If Leader McConnell doesn't hold a full and fair trial, the American people will rightly ask, what are you, Leader McConnell, and what is President Trump hiding?
On Monday, the House released its final impeachment report, a 169-page document detailing the rationale for the charges and accusing the president of betraying the nation for his own political gain. On Tuesday evening, over 600 rallies, marches, and other events are scheduled around the country, all beginning at about 5:30 p.m. local time, to demonstrate to our lawmakers that their constituents are behind them, urging them to defend the Constitution and acknowledge that Trump has left them no alternative to uphold their oath of office but to support impeachment and removal. Find your closest event now at impeach.org. Well, the House released a bill to keep the government funded through September 2020 on Monday afternoon and will vote on it Tuesday. The spending bill also contains a slew of unrelated items, including a few win for Democrats, $25 million in funding for federal gun violence research. That's the first time that's happened in over 20 years. $425 million in election security grants. A $208 million boost in funding for the EPA. A 3.1% pay increase for federal civilian employees. $7.6 billion in funding for the 2020 census, and record funding for education programs, including Head Start. Also tagged on the spending bill is a bill raising the national age for tobacco sales to 21, a reauthorization of the Export-Import Bank of the U.S., and a permanent repeal of several Affordable Care Act taxes that have faced bipartisan opposition and have been repeatedly delayed since the act passed in 2010. Also included, a flood insurance extension, extending the terrorism insurance program, and reauthorizing money to rebuild the Kennedy Center. Oh, and on Trump's stupid border wall, funding remains unchanged from 2019 levels at $1.375 billion. Too much, but again, short of the $8.6 billion Trump requested from Congress. Well, the next primary debate is scheduled for this Thursday night at LA's Loyola Marymount University, but it may not happen. All 7 of the candidates qualified to participate have said they will not cross a picket line. A group of about 150 unionized workers at Loyola Marymount are headed to a contract bargaining session on Tuesday that could determine whether the debate will happen at all. By the way, neither the Democratic Party nor the university itself is directly involved in the dispute, which is between a campus food services contractor and Unite Here, a powerful service workers union. Stay tuned. Meanwhile, Donald Trump is setting the stage to not participate in any 2020 presidential debates. Last week, the New York Times reported that Trump has told advisors he doesn't trust the bipartisan Commission on Presidential Debates. The Times also reported that Trump has concerns about which journalists will be chosen to moderate the debates. Of course, he took his complaints to Twitter, claiming the commission is, quote, stacked with Trump haters and never Trumpers. He said there are many options, including doing them directly and avoiding the nasty politics of this very biased commission. The commission responded by pointing out that preparations for next fall's debates are already well underway, saying, quote, our record is one of fairness, balance, and nonpartisanship. Speaking of Trump, PolitiFact has announced its Lie of the Year of 2019. And it is Trump's claim that the, quote, whistleblower got Ukraine call almost completely wrong. Well, the editors noted, quote, despite what Trump claims, the whistleblower got the call, quote, almost completely right. And not to be one-upped, the Washington Post fact-checkers database of every suspect statement by Trump now has a total of 15,413 false or misleading claims since Inauguration Day. They also noted that the 2019 total is more than 2018 and 2017 combined. Way to go, Trump. And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com. Please click on the donate button.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 30 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high, maybe in the low to mid 40s. and cloudy skies will prevail throughout the day. Winds are currently out of the due south, light and variable about 1 mile per hour, though we'll be picking up out of the due east at 5 to 10 miles per hour, as it was yesterday, pretty much out of the east. We'll shift tonight out of the east-southeast, maintaining its clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour. Cloudy conditions will prevail. And then tomorrow, the wind will shift out of the southeast, continuing at 5 to 10 miles per hour, but bringing with it, a third to a half inch of rain. And then the day after that, another half inch of rain. Oh my, we have some rain in the forecast. Though it looks like I might have not a rainy, at least here till I get a little further north. It doesn't seem like I'll have much weather, bad weather in terms of snow, ice, slippery conditions, or rain on my travel day, Christmas Eve day. So, once again, reminder, we're going to go into robot station mode over the holidays. And all of your let's hope all of your favorites will be in queue. But David's show, whether live, recorded, or a reprise from last year, will be in its regular place, though we will have a mix of regular and special holiday programming. So stay tuned for that. All right, so let's see here. It looks like pollen is still rated at none. I guess so. It's wintertime. Air quality index is in the good range at 27 parts per million, and the daytime UV index remains low at 1. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.2 inches. Visibility is at 9 miles, and relative humidity is at 77%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 46 and cloudy. Paris is 57 and cloudy. Rome is 60 degrees and partly cloudy. Kiev is 45 and fair. Kabul is 37 with still a lot of smoke. They have an inversion layer there, Holds it all in. Hong Kong is 70 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 48 and partly cloudy with a flood warning. Sydney, Australia is 62 degrees and clear. Yeah, except for all the fires burning. You'd think they'd have smoke in the forecast. And let's see, San Francisco is 46 and mostly cloudy with a warning of heavy rain. And New York is 34 degrees Fahrenheit with really a lot of rain in your own flood warning, so do take care. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Even more anonymous worker bees at Reuters bring us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Estonia apologized to Finland after Estonia's interior minister mocked Finland's new prime minister, the world's youngest-serving government leader, as a salesgirl and questioned her ability to run the Nordic country. Do go to my show notes and links diary on Daily Codes that I put links up on social media. You have to look at a picture of this guy. No wonder Obama said that, man, if the men, especially these old ones, would just get out of the way, maybe the world would be a lot better if the women started running things, okay? Really. Abigail Adams did ask John, what about the ladies? And John said, are you kidding me? It's bad enough at home. You run the roost here. Do you think I'm going to give up any amount of power to you in the public sphere? He didn't put it that way specifically, but that's what he meant. Mart Helm, age 70, Estonian Interior Minister and leader of the populist far-right party, ridiculed Finnish Prime Minister Sanna Marin, age 34, and her government, in which 4 out of 5 coalition leaders are women under the age of 35. Now we see how one salesgirl has become a prime minister, and how some other street activists and non-educated people have also joined the cabinet. Helm said on his party's radio talk show. Well, he has a party, and his party has a talk show. Oh, is that sort of pushing out the propaganda? Might. His comments prompted the opposition to call for his resignation, while Estonian President Kersti Kaljulaid asked Finland's President Sauli Niinisto to pass on her apologies to Marin and her government. Social Democrat Marin, who has spoken about growing up in a disadvantaged family, worked as a cashier before studying at university and embarking on a political career. Wow. She's sort of like their AOC, I suppose. I am extremely proud of Finland. Here, a poor family's child can educate themselves and achieve their goals in life. A cashier can become even a prime minister, Marin wrote. Well, you know, education is supposed to be the vehicle of social mobility, but do you notice that the really poorly educated rich people don't want anyone to have social mobility? They might be supplanted. They just might. Helm, a former Estonian ambassador to Russia, is known for outspoken statements that regularly embarrass Prime Minister Jüri Ratas and his Center Party, and that's EKRA's coalition partner. EKRA was accepted for the first time into a government coalition in April after Ratas lost parliamentary elections, but clinched a deal with the party to stay in power.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière, la promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle, c'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Francesco Garasio of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The European Commission urged Malta to speed up reforms to ensure the independence of its judiciary amid an uproar over the investigation into the 2017 murder of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. As reported here periodically since she was assassinated, not just a murder but an assassination. In a letter to Maltese Justice Minister Owen Bonizzi, seen by Reuters, European Justice Commissioner Didier Reynders said Malta should carry out a thorough investigation free from political interference to bring those responsible to justice. 2 years after the car bomb that killed the anti-corruption journalist, police have been unable to say who hired the killers. Last month, a man given immunity from prosecution confessed to being the middleman. Since then, one of Malta's wealthiest men has been charged with complicity to murder. Muscat's government, he's the leader of Malta, by the way, has denied his request for immunity in return for testimony he said would implicate senior officials. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on, and we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Hey, find an impeachment rally tonight. Go to it. Show out in mass numbers. We need to make ourselves visible. And we're going to meet up tomorrow for Smothered Benedict Wednesday, so stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here, in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Robe à fleurs sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.